All right, how y'all doing? Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to all the organizers, to Rebecca, to everyone who's done a fantastic job being here. I'm Scott Warren. Incredibly excited to be here. I ran into the energy here is just awesome. It's amazing. There's going to be more noise here than on the streets during the Nuggets game. And I do know that the Nuggets game starts in like an hour, so I gotta be brief up here. I'm excited to be here speaking. I also will be judging the presentations tomorrow. So my favorite drink is a bourbon on the rocks for anyone that's interested. In all seriousness, really excited to be judging. And just truly an honor to be here in Denver. They've had a big week this week. It was great to have Mayor Hancock here. They had their mayoral election, their runoff on Tuesday. The Nuggets are obviously in the finals playing game 4 in an hour. And so just an awesome time to be in Denver. I have to cop. So I live in DC right now, but I'm originally from San Diego, California. We got any San Diego folks here? I don't know if Los Angeles and San Diego, we can talk after. But it is close. But just down the street, the Rockies are playing the San Diego Padres tonight. So while everybody is going to be focused on the NBA game, I will be focused on the Major League Baseball game. So enough about sports. I really appreciate the theme of the convening and the presentations that y'all are going to be giving on youth engagement in civic life. As Jennifer said, that's been my entire life. I was a youth activist. I believe deeply in the ability of young people to make change. Every time in this country's history, in this world's history, that we see positive change, young people are at the forefront. It's the unique idealism that you all have as young people to see the world for what it can be, not for what it is today, and the irreverence that you all have for not accepting the situation as you see it today that allows us to push things forward. And so I'd love to spend just a little bit of time talking about why I care about youth civic engagement, and how young people can and should be front and center, especially right now. As Doug and others said, we are in a challenging, important time. I think a time in which democracy and civic engagement itself is being reinvented. And there's a lot of people that are distrustful of institutions, like the mayor was saying, as actually able to achieve what we need them to achieve. And I think in order to get to a better place, young people are going to have to be at the front and center. So I think first I like to start by sort of asking, why do we care about civic engagement? Why do we care about democracy? I think for the people in this room, it's very self-evident why we care about bringing people together, why we care about listening to fellow residents and citizens. But I don't think it's relevant for everyone. I don't think it's something that everybody thinks about all the time. And I think that democracy still has so much power and still has so much potential, but we haven't realized everything that it can be. And I started caring about this as a young person. And my path is a little different. Everybody has their own journey. And throughout the next 2 days, I'd love to hear why you care about this work, why you're in your city, why you're in this room right now, passionate about making a difference, because I think we all have that moment of civic awakening. But for me, I'm from San Diego, but I actually grew up abroad. So my dad was a public servant. My dad joined the State Department, the Foreign Service, when I was 8 years old. And so we spent the majority of my childhood living overseas. And what happened is I had the opportunity to observe countries and citizens that were first realizing what it meant to live in a democracy. And so I had the opportunity in 2002 as a 10th grader, so as a young person, to observe the first truly democratic elections in Kenya's history. We were living in Kenya at the time. And I remember going to a schoolhouse at 6 in the morning and seeing 60 people waiting in line to cast their first vote, to really make a collective difference in their country's trajectory. And over throughout the day, just saw people that were so excited to participate, to have their voices matter, because they had never mattered before. That election worked. The opposition candidate won. People were in the streets celebrating, like people will be in the streets celebrating here when the Nuggets win. And then 5 years later, they had another election that did not go as well. And that same candidate rigged the results. People took to the streets. Over 1,000 people died. and such a poignant reminder of the power of democracy when it works and the fragility of it when it's taken from people and when it's stolen. And I had these experiences growing up. I graduated from high school in Ecuador, and I was there during a coup when people took to the streets to depose of a president that they felt wasn't delivering on the promises that he was elected to do. And I visited my parents during runoff elections in Zimbabwe and met with opposition leaders whose lives had been threatened, whose families had been kicked out of the country. And they were literally willing to put their lives on the line for this concept, for this idea of democracy that they had never actually lived. And I think we're seeing that a lot in this country right now. People recognizing that our communities, that our democracy cannot be taken for granted. And you all are on the front lines figuring out how we actually can re-envision a system that works for everyone. I came back to the US and I actually served as a youth activist in college. I was active on different causes, some international, some domestic. I helped pass bills. I was arrested in front of the White House in an act of civil disobedience, trying to get then President Bush to take more action against the genocide in Darfur, Sudan. And so I say that because there's different ways to take action. You can play the inside game, you can play the outside game. I probably don't seem like someone now that would be arrested for civil disobedience, so I say that partially to give myself a little street cred. But what I realized is I'm always, for the young people in the room, I really want to talk to you all later, but what I realized, I was talking to a lot of young people, and they all wanted to make change, but they actually didn't see engaging in their local communities, or they didn't see engaging in local politics as the best way to affect change. They didn't believe that their voices could actually matter, and they were like, we'll do different forms of engaging and volunteering, but civic action, that's not for us. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. A lot of young people are just distrustful that the system can work for them. Again, I want to hear if that's something that you all can relate to. But another big reason is that we don't teach civics education to the extent that we used to. And when we do, it's sort of here are the three branches of government, here's how a bill becomes a law, go take a test. It's not vibrant. Democracy, civic life needs to be vibrant. Y'all understand that. And so I helped found an organization, Generation Citizen, that was all about how do we get civics back into schools, and how do we make it the most exciting, most vibrant class where young people are learning politics through doing politics. And so I set out to do that, and I founded the organization as a 22-year-old that had no idea what I was doing. And as Jennifer said, I somehow ran it for about 11 years. And have so many stories, could share so many stories. Every time we entered a classroom, what would happen is that the whole program works is that we ask young people, what do you care about? What do you want to change in your community? And every time we enter a classroom, eyes glaze over. We can't do anything. You're going to tell us that we can actually do something about these issues? No one cares what we think. With reason, they said a lot of that, right? With reason, because that's something that they've been told over and over again. You're too young to actually do anything. And over the course of this semester, they take action. So I just saw him the other day, a man named Julian, who's from Colombia, went to Lowell, Massachusetts, immigrated to Lowell, Massachusetts, didn't know English. He learned English. And he led his entire class. They wanted to take action on gun control. It's like, what do we do? Gun control is such a weighty issue. And they started a gun buyback program in Lowell. They worked with the local Lowell Police Department and actually created a gun buyback program. I was just listening to a class earlier this week in Massachusetts, and they wanted to take action to try to get more cell towers built because they lived in more a rural community in Massachusetts that didn't have cell towers. These are real issues affecting people, right? I got to visit a rural town in Oklahoma called Ninnekah. And this is rural, but they saw the power of taking action. And I talked to the principal, and he said the young people in this town, what they care about is that there's a train station, or there's a train that goes through the town, and there's no stop sign on either side of the train tracks. And so we have cars that have got hit, we have young people that have been killed, and these young people don't feel like they have power. And that notion of how we give people power is something that we care about. And so over and over would hear from young people that they just wanted to be heard, that they wanted to make sure that people would listen to them. So that's what Generation Citizen does, is really giving them a voice. And I started looking through a lot of what you all are doing, and it's about making sure that young people feel heard, not in a tokenized way, not in a like, all right, we need to get like a young person or two on this commission to check the box, but because they have real knowledge to bear on the problems that are facing their communities. I stepped down as a CEO about 2 years ago because, like you all, I believe in the power of of democratic leadership, which means that no one person should be in charge for too long. So I'm still on the board, but very proud of the direction that the organization's taking. And I've started spending a little bit more time thinking about sort of the broader issues of youth political engagement, and working with cities. And so that's something we'll get into. But how can cities actually think about democratic engagement? And one of the things I've seen when working with cities, and again, this is something like when I'm talking to city leaders, I want to be like, is this something that you all think, is that there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect sometimes between cities and young people right now. Because what's happening is that cities are saying, we really want to listen to young people, but they're not necessarily coming to meetings, or they're not necessarily participating, or not necessarily voting. So we don't know what to do. Like, we want them to participate. And then young people, I talk to young people, and they're like, why the hell should we participate if people aren't listening to what we think, right? And we go to the meetings and people don't care about what we think, or we vote and the same people keep on getting into office. So it's this vicious cycle, right? Where young people are turning away from institutional politics, and they're turning away from formalized methods of participating. And then you have officials that are saying, well, we don't know what to do if they're not participating in institutional politics. So what do we do? What do we do with this fact that young people are turning away? And this is where we have to be real about how young people are feeling right now. So I've sort of been thinking about this new framework of youth political engagement. And part of it is recognizing, I hear all the time of like, oh, young people are apathetic, young people aren't participating, right? Like, this is something that we may hear. And that's just not true. Young people more than ever want to affect change, and they're affecting change in different ways. They're looking outside of institutional politics to actually affect change. They're getting creative. They're using digital means. They're using the arts. So what does this mean if young people are participating in different ways? How can you as city leaders actually take action? So first, I actually think it's really important to recognize that young people are frustrated, right? And again, I want to hear from you all if this is the case, but I've talked to a lot of young people that are frustrated, and this is what the statistics bear out too. So there have been some recent studies. 46% of young people in this country feel like their voices do not make a difference. So almost half of the young people in this country feel like their voices do not make a difference. They feel like their voices aren't represented in government. And this is true around the world. There was a recent study done that talked to 10,000 young people across the world, including the US. 65% of young people around the world believe that government is failing them. 75% feel that humanity is doomed. So 3/4 of the young people in this world feel that humanity is doomed. That's pretty stark. Now, this isn't irrational, right? Like, it's not like young people are coming up with this from nowhere. There's incredibly high levels of economic inequality. So higher levels that we've seen in generations. Climate change, they want action to be taken on these intractable issues. And there's this danger that young people are going to turn away from democracy and civic life itself because they're so frustrated. But, and here's where like these conferences and convenings have so much power. Young people want change. Here's the opportunity. Young people want change. And they're looking at different ways to affect that, right? They're looking at reinventing and reimagining civic life and democracy itself. So what can y'all do? Sort of taking both of these truths at the same time. The young people are really frustrated, but they really want change, right? Both of those things are true at the same time. So one, and you can recognize that young people are frustrated. It's all right to say that. Listen to them. Hear them in terms of what they're saying, including here. Like, see y'all in the front row, sort of, I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're frustrated about. I like listening to young people. This is a competition. It's a competition. We're going to hear your presentations focused on how to engage young people. I want to hear how you're actually listening to young people. The second part is meet young people where they're at. There's a lot of folks, and I'll do this too. I'm not as young as I used to be. They'll be like, oh, young people are on their phones too much. They're engaging digitally. They're like, in technology. But there's a certain extent where they're reinventing the ways that the civic sphere looks like. And we need to meet them where they're at rather than insisting that they engage with some of the ways of the past. And then we need to innovate. And there's different ways, and this is what y'all are thinking about, but different programs that are actually thinking about different ways that young people can participate. We need to think about, this is always a crazy idea, but one that I care about, lowering the voting age to 16. There's different communities that are thinking about that, but how do we actually give young people more of a voice? There's these things called citizen assemblies that are taking the the nation and world by storm, which are random samplings of people making decisions. How do we actually get young people involved in stuff like that? So I guess this is all to say, this is a challenging time, and I know, like, if you pay attention to the news, there's a lot of division, and I think I'm so heartened and excited to be in a room with all these diverse cities, literally from coast to coast in the middle of the country with young people. And I still believe deeply in the power of democracy and the ideal of democracy, and the reason is fundamentally because of young people, because of like the young people in this room, because of what you all are doing to engage young people. And I can't wait to hear from all the presentations that you have to give of how you all are engaging young people. But most of all, I can't wait to listen to the young people in this room, how you all are thinking about reinventing and reimagining democracy. Mayor Hancock said this, but the country and our communities are in your hands. We're here to support, and I can't wait to hear all the fantastic ideas that you have to propel us forward. So thank you. I'm excited to be here.